Well, the season's over. The Villanova Wildcats knocked the Ohio State Buckeyes out of the NCAA tournament on Sunday afternoon. Yesterday, I had a little sense of deja vu and also a thank you to E.J. Liddell. All that and more right here on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes, part of Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, March 21st in the year 2022, and this episode of Locked on Buckeyes is brought to you by StatHero. StatHero is reshaping the way you play fantasy sports. Dozens of house-based games to play daily. No sharks, no funky props, just your skill versus the lineups you choose. Sign up today at stathero.com/locked on. I would also like to thank everyone out there for making the Locked on Buckeyes podcast their first listen or first watch of every single day. The Ohio State basketball team had a season that was interesting. From the players that were on it, the way it was constructed, and the injuries that were suffered during the season, this season was interesting. After the first round win over Loyola Chicago, where the Buckeyes held them to under 30% shooting from the field, everybody was thinking, okay, Villanova Wildcats, a really good coach team, a really disciplined basketball team, a team that has talent all over the court. That also has a really good coach as well, NJ Wright. Would Ohio State be able to duplicate the defensive performance they had against Loyola against Villanova? They would have to be disciplined, really disciplined. They would have to be able to not just allow the length that they have sometimes on defense to do things, but also use their brain, sliding their feet, getting their body the right positioning, knowing when to use your right foot, when to use your left foot, what angle to use your arm, all of those things, when to hop the passing lane, when not to. Those are things people are thinking about going into the Ohio State Buckeye game against Villanova on Sunday, because those are things that would be needed for them to win. Yes, the offensive struggles would be there, but if they play good defense, they could be victorious in this game. It didn't take long to realize or to figure out. Villanova was the more disciplined team. Villanova had the better players. Villanova had the better coach. And all throughout the game, even though the Buckeyes got down by 15 and then came back to get it within 2, it didn't really seem like Ohio State had enough firepower to come out victorious in this game. The Buckeye season ends via a 10-point loss to Villanova. The Buckeyes finish the season 20-12. Chris Holtmann has another 20-win season under his belt. I believe he has 20 wins in every season at Ohio State. But unfortunately, once again, Ohio State fails to get out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. It's been on the Twitter. I've said it here numerous times. My expectations for this team, even if Kyle Young came back, which he did come back during the Loyola Chicago game, I did not expect this team to get out of the first weekend of the tournament. Yes, they have Malachi Branham. Yes, they have E.J. Liddell. Liddell, probably a future lottery pick. Malachi Branham, if he stays in school, will be a lottery pick next season, which is what I would advise him to do, even though he looked like he was making some pro moves yesterday on the court. Another year in school, perfecting his craft and really getting stronger with his legs and his core and his shoulders would be a better move for me for him to get to the NBA. But ultimately, he's going to have advisors. He has Chris Holtmann. He has his parents to help him make the best decision for his basketball career. Ohio State players were trying everything they could yesterday to make this game to come back, to make a comeback, to make a miraculous win, and to move on to the Sweet 16. It's unfortunate during yesterday's game, Kyle Young went down with what looked like to be another concussion. And that was a big factor for them, because Kyle Young's energy, his ability to be a leader on the court is infectious, and the team saw that when he was out there. Malachi Branham led all scorers yesterday with 23 points on 10 of 19 shooting. He did make 3 3-pointers as well. EJ Liddell followed that up with 17 points of his own on 6 of 13 shooting, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. Just literally a stat sheet stuffer. When Ohio State needed a third scorer, they did not have one. Ohio State, their third highest leading scorer was Kyle Young, had 6 points. He only played 28 minutes. Remember, he left the game early yesterday. And then you had Eugene Brown III with 5 points. Jamari Wheeler with 3 points. He hit a 3, I believe, in the first half. You had Zed Key with 4. We're going to talk more about Zed Key and some things I think he needs to do to get better. And then Michi Johnson had 3. He hit a 3. And once again, I do believe that was in the first half. For some reason, in this game, just like we have seen all year long, Cedric Russell, a guy that is the main reason, a big reason why you beat the Duke Blue Devils, and a big piece of from what I thought would be a big rotational piece, potentially a starter for the Buckeyes, only played 4 minutes. Those were only 4 minutes in the first half. And a guy that I think could have helped Ohio State yesterday with the score when they needed somebody else to be able to get a shot. Justin Arns ain't getting it. You only got Liddell and Brandon that could get loose. Zed Key is not a go-to guy. You don't have Jamari Wheeler, a point guard who can be a go-to scorer or can create for himself. You're strapped with the players that you have on your team. And once again, it shows yesterday that Ohio State, a team that's really talented, that has guys on there that are future pros, this team has issues. They've had them all year long, and they reared their ugly head yesterday against Villanova. You got to give credit to Villanova, though. Not looking at the box score, just watching the game. They're disciplined. Defensively, offensively, they know their role. They stick with the game plan, and nobody goes against it. We look at the box score, though, you do see that Dixon, their big man, had 13 points and 8 rebounds. 5 of his 8 rebounds were offensive. He went 5 on 9 shooting from the field. Samuels from Villanova had 17 points and 8 rebounds on 7 of 9 shooting. Colin Gillespie had 20 points and 4 assists. He made all 8 of his free throws. Shooting wasn't the best, as he only made 5. He was only 5 of 14 shooting from the field, but he made all 8 of his free throws. Villanova from the free throw line, 17 of 20. Ohio State from the charity stripe, 6 for 11. The Ohio State Buckeyes season is over. It was something we all expected, but once it's over, it hits a little bit different. We'll be talking about this team and players and ways players can improve all week long going into next week, because even though the season is over, we want to make sure this team wants to talk about how this team can get better. We'll do it all here throughout the week on Locked On Buckeyes. Today, at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every team show on the Locked On NHL channel will be live for the NHL trade deadline. Yes, the Columbus Blue Jackets will be live, and every other team show helping you know everything you need to know during the NHL trade deadline. Every now and then, the Locked On Podcast Network does these big events, big shows where people go live and they do a draft show, or even for the NCAA tournament, there was a bracket show that they did. This is huge. Every NHL show going live at the same time to allow you, the listener, you, the fan, to have an avenue and a way for you to get all the information you need about your favorite team. Yes, the Columbus Blue Jackets and everybody else. Make sure you're tapped in, tuned in, 3 p.m. Eastern time, so you're knowing what's going on with your favorite hockey team. Like I mentioned earlier, during the game yesterday that the Buckeyes ended up losing, I'm sitting here watching this game, and I'm at home. This is one of those games where I have my notebook, but I wasn't really taking much notes. It was more mental notes, just kind of viewing and sensing and getting a good feel for the game. So as the game is going forward, as the game's being played, I am watching Villanova. I'm looking at their players, looking at Jay Wright, looking at Chris Holtman, looking at Liddell, looking at Wheeler, looking at Arns, at Brown, at Branham, looking at Samuels and Gillespie and Dixon and the other Arcidiacono, which came off the bench. And I was like, wait, there is no way Ryan Arcidiacono is still in college basketball. He's been out for a while. He can't be doing that. No, it's not Ryan Arcidiacono. It's, I think, Colin Arcidiacono. There's another one of those boys that's at Villanova playing the basketball. So I was like, man, this whole basketball family, this kid got to be like 35,000 years old. No, it's not. I think Ryan is like 27. I believe his brother Colin is maybe like 21, maybe, coming off the bench. But as I'm watching this game, I'm sitting here looking at this and saying, this reminds me of what we saw about Ohio State football during the season. Ohio State football had a lot of talent, had a lot of guys that were really good in Big Ten play. A lot of guys that didn't play their best football, and a lot of times them not playing their best football would have been the downfall of Ohio State if it weren't for C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith and Jigba, sometimes Travion Henderson, sometimes Steel Chambers, sometimes Denzel Burke, really saving the day and allowing the Buckeyes to live to fight another day to have a chance to play in the college football playoff. So as Villanova, as I'm watching them, a few things stuck out. I mentioned some earlier, but let's go a little bit more in depth. They're disciplined. And it's not just the discipline that you would expect your average or regular college basketball team to have. No. They don't deviate from the job. They don't deviate from the game plan. They don't deviate from what their role is. Everybody sticks with their role. Everybody knows their role. Everybody does their job. And by doing their job, even in a comeback, they have enough dudes on their team to win the game. I'm looking at Ohio State. Does Ohio State have guys that are disciplined? No. Does Ohio State have good enough basketball players to make a deep tournament run? Absolutely not. Does Ohio State have a coach that keeps the team prepared and is coaching the team to be really disciplined? Holtman's a good coach. But this Buckeyes team is not disciplined. There's a big difference between Villanova and Ohio State. It's not just the system that Jay Wright has built. It's the players that buy into what he is preaching every single day. That's where the Buck is different. That's where things are. There's a big gap between Ohio State and, say, a Duke, or an Ohio State and a Villanova, or an Ohio State and an Arizona, or an Ohio State and a Kansas. Now, granted, some of those other schools have had programs that have been really successful. Kansas, Bill Self, been there for a very long time. Coach K and Duke been there since the 80s. When he come in 79? Forget exactly when Coach K's first year at Duke was, but he's been there for a very long time. Jay Wright, national champion. So you're saying, Jay, we're not comparing things completely. Arizona's coach is only his first year there as their head coach. First year. Now, granted, you say, Jay, they were a good basketball team last year. This is true. However, a lot of times in year one, the new coach is not able, I believe it's year one, is not able to get his system across to the players because they have their old way of thinking still ingrained in their head. There's a difference between the players that those other schools have, even if those coaches weren't preaching disciplines to their players, and what Ohio State has. What do you need to go deep in the tournament? I've said it a long time. You need to have good lead guard play and somebody that can create all the time. Primarily a point guard, but if you have an off guard that can do that, great. That's Branham. He's gotten better at it. It would have been better if it was a guy in Jamari Wheeler or your point guard that can create and get easier shots for Branham, because Branham's getting a lot of shots where he's creating for himself, and his mid-range game is just filthy. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's just filthy. It's something that you would want you to have if you're playing basketball. I would want it if I was playing basketball. His length, you would want it if you were playing basketball, because it's just filthy. It's a lot of things you just can't teach. You just have, and then you add to your God-given ability. There's a gap. I think the gap in the basketball is nowhere near as large as the gap is in football between Ohio State football, Alabama, Georgia, those players that are there, and what we see on the basketball court. This team does not have good enough players and did not have good enough players to make a deep tournament run. I am on the fence with Chris Holtmann. I'm not saying fired. I don't think he'll get fired from what Gene Smith has been saying. I think that there might not be an extension, but Chris Holtmann might be able to coach through the end of his contract, which I think goes through at least 2024, maybe longer than that. But Chris Holtmann has to change some things quickly. Because unlike with the football team, Ryan Day, well, the football team immediately made changes. I mean, instantaneously, we aren't doing this anymore. I ain't about to lose my job for y'all. We got to make some changes, and made some changes quickly via the coaching staff. Really didn't tap into the transfer portal, but said, hey, coaching staff, we gotta make some changes. New linebackers coach, new defensive coordinator, new cornerback coach, new safety coach, new O-line coach. A lot of things are changing. So many quality control coaches, some GAs and grad assistants that are coming in as well. Really, Ryan Day is like, look, I ain't about to do this for y'all. Yup, we got to fix this, and I got to make some changes right now. The same goes for Chris Holtman. The same. Now, granted, he's lucky the expectation for Buckeye basketball is not the same expectation for Buckeye football. But however, I have listened and read. I have listened to you. I have read your comments. I have read your tweets. You guys are fed up with the way the basketball program plays the basketball. You want a basketball program that can be competitive and that can compete night in and night out and has good enough basketball players. Something needs to change. As I'm watching yesterday's game, that sense of deja vu, it was weird. It's something I got during the season. It was really apparent during yesterday's game. Get better players. You're losing, I believe, 7 players to graduation. Liddell to the draft. I assume hasn't made an official announcement, but it's almost assumed he's going to the draft. You got to figure something out. I said last year, go out and get Walker Kessler. But if I'm Walker Kessler, would I really want to come to Ohio State and ditch going to Auburn? Absolutely not. 7-1-245 fits the Auburn program very well. You would see how Auburn is doing in the NCAA tournament. They're out, but they still had a good run and had a really good season this year. The Buckeyes hit the portal. Get you a point guard that can do some things by himself to make it easier for the other guys to get open. Work on those entry passes, because those were bad. Those were poor, and those really annoyed me every single game. Work on a lot of things, but a lot of it is in practice. Discipline, discipline, discipline. Good basketball teams, elite basketball teams are disciplined. Good elite basketball teams also have really good players. 2 things Ohio State does not have. The YouTube subscriptions keep coming in, and I want to say thank you. Thank you so much to everyone out there that keeps filling up the subscription section for Locked On Buckeyes on YouTube. We're climbing our way to 1,000 subscriptions. I know once we start going back to football, you guys love it. The algorithm on the YouTube loves it as well. And I know they'll start coming in once you start deviating from so much basketball talk. But don't worry about that. Football, basketball, doesn't matter. You listen, you subscribe, you hit the like button on this video and every other video on this channel. There are free ways to help this channel grow. Once we get to 1,000, planning on trying to have some different guests on. Maybe somebody that we haven't heard from ever on the podcast that I think you will enjoy hearing from, that maybe you haven't heard from for a very long time. E.J. Liddell's impact on this year's basketball team and the way he will be remembered as a Buckeye is one of those things that not every school has, where you have a guy that's been a leader, that's transformed this game, that's gotten better on the basketball court, but even to the point that he has gotten better in so many aspects, it's crazy to watch. I started covering the Ohio State Buckeyes last year during the 2021 2020-2021 season. Started in December and then went to 2021. Last year's NCAA tournament was all in the state of Indiana. That's kind of how I remember exactly when things were. I took over the show the COVID year in 2020. I think my first official show was in October, and then the season started the 3rd week of October, the football season, that is. And so during that time when I was getting ready for the basketball, I had not really watched much Ohio State basketball previously before that during the 2019-2020 season, which abruptly got ended when the COVID, in response to the COVID, and Ohio State and other schools did not play in the NCAA tournament, and many didn't play in their conference tournaments either. So in the 2020-2021 season, I come in and I'm like, okay, cool. Ohio State has these guys. They got these players. One of my buddies helped me get up to date with what the Ohio State basketball program is all about. Chris Holtman. I know about Chris Holtman. I've seen his teams play all the time at Butler. So I know a little bit about what he does, what he preaches, what he coaches, all those things. But then there's this guy, E.J. Liddell. And this dude was good, man. He was good. Dwayne Washington Jr., one of those streaky shooters that at times just took too many shots. He was good. He just took too many shots. And then once he realized, like, Liddell and I could play off of each other and play very well together, and Liddell and I don't need all this extra time. All we got to do is just do our thing, play our game, have a little fun on the court. We can be successful. Ohio State had success last season. I was not one that thought Liddell should have gone to the league, should have come back to school. I was actually pretty surprised. He was going through the pre-draft process. Didn't fully understand the process at that time. Now I do, and I understand why he did it. It would have been a suggestion. It would be a suggestion I would give to Malachi Branham right now. Don't automatically go to the league. Just go, put your name in, go through the pre-draft process, hear what you got to hear, and then make your decision after that fact, because the league does give you time to make your decision after getting some workouts or talking to some teams about what the kind of player you would be in the National Basketball Association. Then when Liddell decided to come back this year and play the basketball, I'm sitting here thinking, all right, coming back, no Dwayne Washington Jr. You got a freshman coming in, Malachi Branham. We're going to see how he does. He's a freshman, so I hope he stays 2 years. I hope he stays 3 years. That was my assumption. That was my belief at that time at the beginning of the season. But then Liddell came in, and defensively, my goodness, this boy improved like crazy. Versatility, being able to switch on to point guards, shooting guards, small forwards, and power forwards in basketball. Sometimes centers, depending on how switch on the centers, depending on how big you are and size-wise. But he was not afraid of the moment. He was never afraid of what was right in front of him. And he was never afraid of taking big shots. Breaking his career high in scoring early in the season, to being the leader Ohio State needed to have throughout all the injuries, throughout all the ups and downs, throughout the scoring droughts in the second half of games, and due to, or even latter part of the season, losing 4 or 5 games, and most of those losses being to really bottom feeder teams in the Big Ten Conference. Always had a smile on his face. Always was a leader the team needed. And I think it's how we'll always remember E.J. Liddell, the basketball player, while he was at Ohio State. A leader, a great player, somebody you could rely on when you needed a basket, somebody you could rely on when you needed a defensive stop, and somebody never really complained. Didn't complain, didn't have any issues, did what was asked of him. And nobody I have heard has anything negative to say about Liddell, his time at Ohio State, and what he did on the basketball court. That's a great way to leave a program. That's a great legacy to have. I assume that he is going to enter the NBA draft. It's just an assumption. If he does, great. If he comes back, it would be a huge shock. But I just want to thank E.J. Liddell for another great basketball season, another fun season. And it's unfortunate it ended without him going deeper in the tournament. That would have been a great way for him to really enjoy more time with his teammates and more time with Chris Holtmann being his head coach. Thank you guys so much for tapping into this episode of Locked On Buckeyes. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. Thanks once again for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. The Locked On NFL Draft podcast, just like Locked On Buckeyes, is free and available wherever you get your fine podcast.